Natasha,
Debbie,
show.
the show.
Welcome to it. Just two patriotic girls.
Learning about the world.
So please, don't take us the wrong way.
Welcome to it, the Natasha and Debbie show.
It's really hard to find a new way to say hi to you guys after 3.5 years of doing this.
3 times a week, saying hi in a different way. So there it was.
And
My new
here
one.
it is. The topic of today's episode. I've never said hi with a piece of bread. Yeah. So if you're keeping track at home in ways that Natasha and W said hi, mark this in your category.
Oh, we should have wrote hi in the bread. We could have put a like button on there.
Oh God, have mercy.
So if you like our content here on YouTube, please hit that like button and also consider subscribing. It's absolutely free.
As I said earlier, today's topic is about bread. These seeds are going everywhere. And we vacuuming after this episode. But we've heard a lot. And today's episode's about the US versus UK bread. We've heard a lot of hatred about American bread. And I agree with you. It's crap. Especially the white bread.
Definitely, it is crappy.
This one's not that bad. This is a seeded bread. But I don't know. Anyway, we've heard a lot of things from you guys in comments over the years about our bread being too sugary, close to cake. If our bread is close to cake, then what kind of cake are you having? That's the question I want to know. That's some bad cake. We don't taste the sweetness to it.
No.
But we also don't eat white bread. This is, like I said, a multi-seeded bread. So this
Plus,
is
we're used to it.
better bread. No, that's true. But we also know our bread sucks. So we've looked at Germany's bread. Hell yeah, I want that.
Definitely.
Also, by the way, have you had our bagels? We're good there. But we're going to compare today the difference between the US and the UK's bread. We're going to get all up in it. Right now.
We're finding all the differences between bread in the US and the UK. Processed bread has existed in both countries for almost a century, and on the surface, it looks quite similar. Unless you've been to the other country's bread aisle and thought, huh? The standard bread loaf size in the UK is 800 grams. Here's the Hovis version. This one is medium thickness, which equates to 20 slices of bread. You might also see mini loaves or half loaves. Here is the Hovis one again. It's 400 grams.
Here's a US processed white bread loaf, also 20 slices.
Grew up on that stuff, actually. But actually the discounted version of it. No. Sorry.
570 grams. So that means the UK option is this much denser, heavier than the UK loaf. Bigger in
Holy
the UK,
crap.
eh? Wonder Bread also comes in a giant, size. The giant size, which is 28 slices, and according to the package is 680 grams.
Let's check the dimensions of a regular slice.
I'm gonna go for
Are
the
you
middle
kidding
piece.
me?
The bread is 4.5.
Okay.
I'm going for like the highest part. Can we say that's 4 inches?
And it weighs
29 grams.
What's the weight?
38 grams.
So if my
Are you effing kidding me?
Definitely heavier.
Okay,
Denser,
interesting.
like you said.
Well, this is definitely a longer, bigger piece than they were showing. But this is like gonna look what it's gonna do. Okay, it didn't actually. Well, yeah, it did.
Wish we had a scale so we could weigh it.
I barely pull this. It's gonna here. Grab it. This is interactive now.
Actual
Gently
bread
pull.
war.
Barely pull. I'm barely pulling. I'm not even touching. I'm not even moving it.
Barely moving it.
Yeah, barely.
We're both like, oh, bread.
That's been sitting over here. But yeah, it's like just showing you the texture. It looks like a fluffy stuff that you find outside, like flying around this time of the year, actually.
And of course, this isn't
No,
the
I don't
white
want
bread
it.
that they're comparing right now.
This is a better bread than what they're comparing right now. That's the bad part. It's still crap. Sorry, guys. Got interested in that. I cannot believe how much denser that is. Huh. Show us the texture.
calculations are correct,
Rip it apart.
it would take roughly this many slices of the US Wonder Bread and
Wow.
20 slices of the UK Hovis bread. Let's
Wow.
put this density to the test. We're going to
Yeah,
see
let's do that.
which country's bread is more pillowy or pillowier. Pillow-like.
Here is our entire loaf of Hovis. Our loaf is 24 centimeters tall.
We're getting scientific now, folks. Here's a stack of our loaf, and right now it is exactly a foot.
12
Combined,
inches.
these two weigh 1.5 kilograms. We're going to squish this bread.
Oh, ours is going to go, well,
So with a weight of 1.5 kilos on top of it, it's actually only gone down to 20 centimeters. What if we stop messing around? Here's a 3 kilogram weight.
I'm going to use this external hard drive I haven't opened yet.
I have that
Really
one.
matches weight.
Just another day at the office. And obviously now,
Interesting.
for science,
What is
What's
he
the
doing?
squishiest I can get this?
giving CPR to a loaf of bread. Using all the power of my enormous muscles, I was able to get this down to just 8 centimeters, a third of its original height.
We win, I think. So alert the scientific community. The most accurate test of bread fluffiness has been done by us. Food Wars team, you're welcome.
Shelf life and texture are two of the key reasons why our bread evolved to look like this instead of this.
Modern bread was designed to be tough enough to hold lunch meats and cheeses,
Got Dave's
withstand the spread of peanut butter, and be soft enough to bite through, and stay edible longer. To do this, bread needs sugar, fat, and preservatives.
Fat, usually in the form of butter or oil, can be added to make it softer and to extend the shelf life. Some sugars occur naturally in bread, but others can be added in to improve the texture, to inhibit mold, and to retain moisture.
How much of that is in our processed bread, you ask?
Oh, boy.
Our standard white bread, Wonder Bread. 2 slices contain 5 grams of added sugar,
2 slices.
1.5 grams of fat. Look at this
Okay.
loaf of bread. It appears to be healthier. Here's the Oro wheat. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. Whole grains, healthy, multigrain. I want to point out here, it even says heart healthy. Fantastic.
That's
2
right.
slices of this has 6 grams of
Holy
added sugar.
crap,
and
more than
5
Wonder
grams of
Bread?
fat. I know.
I'm
There's
shocked.
more to bread than just fat and sugar. There's more ways of deciding if it's good for you or not. I'm just saying, as far as sugar and fat,
did not expect
this
that.
guy has more. Moving on to my man, Dave and his killer bread. Shout out to Dave,
Yeah,
Killer
this
Guitar Bro. For
better
sliced
be
bread,
good.
this is more of a premium option, I feel, right? Dave's
expensive,
Killer
fair.
Bread, specifically this good seed, 2 slices of bread, and 10 grams of added sugar, and 5 grams of fat.
I'm sorry, but you don't understand. Like, I've never bought that one, but I see that one at the grocery store all the time, and it's much more expensive than the other ones.
Yes.
And I never would have thought it had that much more sugar than.
No. The sugar surprises me. The fat doesn't necessarily because of the
No.
seeds in it, and the seeds will have fat in them.
Good fats, actually.
Yeah, right, which are good fats.
Yes,
So-
I agree. But that 10 grams of
Yeah.
sugar for 2, that's double the Wonder Bread.
And then,
So the bread I showed you that we have, I'm gonna go find it. I'm gonna go find out. So this is our off-brand. It's like a store brand version. It's the organic multi-seed bread.
Mhm.
Yeah, multi-seed bread. Okay, how much sugar do you think's in here?
5 grams.
Nope.
Don't know.
3.
3.
Ha! Because I buy better.
Yes, you do.
That's still maybe a lot. I don't know, but it's definitely not 10. It's not even the Wonder Bread's 5.
Is that for 2 slices?
Oh.
So 6.
Yeah, it's for 1 slice.
So 6 grams. That's
Damn it.
not horrible.
Back to the video.
Dave, why so much sugar, my man?
For the most part, UK bread sugar content is pretty low, although the labels here don't often specify if the sugars are added or naturally occurring. Here are a few processed bread options with a range of sugar content. 2 slices of our Hovis white bread contains 2.8 grams of sugar. One of our more sugary options is actually this protein power bread from Warburton's. 2 slices of this contains 3.2 grams of sugar. And then at the lower end of the spectrum, we have this wholemeal, no added sugar bread from Warburton's. 2 slices of this contains just 0.86
Why are we
grams
comparing
of
it
sugar.
in 2
What about
slices?
the calorie count? Back to Wonder Bread. 2 slices, 140 calories.
2 slices of our Hovis soft white medium bread contains 186 calories. Compared to the US Wonder Bread, our bread has less fat, but more calories and carbs. Surprisingly, much higher sodium too.
Although it's a small amount, the
Sodium.
US bread is higher in fiber.
Yeah, we are higher in fiber, but your sodium is like incredibly high, and that's bad. Huh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Fiber aids in digestion and helps you feel fuller longer. You'll also notice both breads are fortified with vitamins and minerals. White flour loses most of its essential nutrients during the milling process.
You're trading out when you do this in any food because it's just the way it is. When you trade out low sugar content or low sodium, you're getting more of the other thing. So you guys have traded out your sugar
For the sodium.
for the sodium. And that's dependent on your health problems. That could be worse for you.
Sure.
Just saying.
In the 1930s, once processed bread became a staple of the modern diet, scientists saw a rise in health issues like rickets and iron deficiencies due to lack of nutrients. So, with the help of the
Christ.
government, manufacturers added those nutrients back in. In the U.S., this was a major selling point for Wonder Bread. Ads in the 60s and
that's
70s
right.
boasted Wonder Bread helps build strong bodies in 12 ways. And let me take a look at this real quick. I mean, I'm looking at this. Look at this. It's got vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid. Booyah.
There are also preservatives added to the bread to help extend the shelf life and to give it a softer, chewier texture. Here are some commonly used ones in both the US and the UK.
A few of them have scary sounding names, but are in some cases natural and harmless in the amount that they are in the bread. Like calcium propionate is a naturally occurring organic salt. Acetic acid is an organic acid and the main component of vinegar. The sorbic acid
Vitamin C.
is vitamin C. Why did they not just call it vitamin C? I don't know. All these ingredients have been studied extensively and are recognized as safe in both countries.
When it comes to retail, bread is sorted into categories in both the US and the UK. There are some key differences between the common types you'll see advertised. In the UK, we pretty much just have a big two. We have white bread and wholemeal bread.
Here in the
Never heard
US,
of
we have
wholemeal
something
bread,
I like
have
to
I?
consider the
No,
big
not.
four.
It's like our whole wheat.
White, whole wheat, whole grain, multigrain. But are there actually many differences between these?
Let's start with
Yeah.
white bread. White bread is made
Better
using
be.
only the endosperm of a wheat grain. That's what gives it its distinctive white
What about
color.
a sperm?
Removing the germ and the bran also takes away some nutrients and gives it a higher glycemic index. I do
Okay.
love white bread. I'm a sucker for it. I know it's not nutritionally as complete as some of the others, but I was a fussy kid and I love my white bread.
When I was a
In the
kid, I
US,
liked it too.
our white bread flour is
I still love
often
white bread.
bleached. Once
Yeah,
floured is
bleached.
milled, it needs to be aged a little bit before it can be ideal for baking. But that takes time and money, so some manufacturers use chemical aging, aka bleaching, to
Thanks,
quicken
America.
the process and make the production more reliable.
In the UK, it's actually illegal to bleach flour.
Good.
Common bleaching additives such as potassium bromate and azodicarbonamide have been considered possible carcinogens after studies linked them to causing cancer in lab animals. Next up, we have wholemeal or whole grain bread. Wholemeal
okay, it
is
is
just
whole
the
grain.
more common term in the UK. This bread, as the name suggests, uses the entire kernel in the milling process. That means the bran, the germ, and the endosperm are all in here. Wholemeal doesn't refer to a specific type of grain.
I didn't know I was eating sperm. Now, come on. I did not need to say that like that.
Endosperm of the wheat.
I'm going to eat it right on camera.
Cheeky.
Is that, did I just like get censored from YouTube? You think they'd block that?
You might
Technically,
have.
this is really like, if you're watching this, it's just like wrong.
Yeah, to eat endosperm live on camera.
That's just not good right now. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop talking.
This could be wheat, but it could also be other things like oat or barley. Definitely got a bit more sponginess and robustness to it than the white loaf
Still
did.
more dense than this stuff.
Much more rounded flavor as well.
The bran is the grain's outer protective shell. The endosperm is the starchiest part of the grain, and it nourishes the germ as it develops. And the germ is what sprouts into the plant. It's the only part of the grain that has healthy fats. This
did
means
not know all this.
these grains are a great source of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. All other bread types have grain that have been refined, so they give bread a finer and softer texture and increase its shelf life. Next, we got whole wheat. As the name suggests, the same process as the whole grain, but specifically they use only wheat for whole wheat rather than other grains like rye. I've always associated white bread with being sweeter, but right there it's like, it just tastes, it tastes kind of like nothing. Whole wheat can really taste the wheat. How's that for some insight? If I was to choose between the two, I usually go whole wheat because you can actually taste the bread. Now, whole wheat bread is technically also a whole grain bread, but not all whole grain bread is whole wheat. Understand?
UK
No.
bread is commonly made with a different type of wheat
Yes,
to the
okay.
US. The UK mostly uses white wheat, which tends to have a lower gluten level when compared to American grains.
Really?
Some UK breads actually make up for this by adding additional wheat gluten as an extra ingredient.
Our wheat is mostly a
interesting.
red wheat variety, and yes, has higher gluten levels. It might be hard to see, but higher gluten content usually means it's chewier and springier. This feels really spongier, right? So many different grains, not just wheat, hence whole grain. And there's also multigrain. Now, multigrain bread refers to any bread where it has at least 2 different grains. 2 means multi, apparently. But usually they use a few. Multigrains can be grains like wheat, oats, rye, quinoa, These grains may have been processed, so unless it states it on the package, don't assume multigrain is also whole grain.
We do have multigrain loaves in UK stores, but they're not super common. Not many of the major brands produce them, or at least advertise that they do have them.
They would be
although we did
popular.
find that this Warburton's protein power loaf is technically multigrain. Brits also love seeded bread, which, as the name suggests, is bread either topped with seeds or with seeds mixed in. Both this protein power loaf and this explicitly seeded loaf from Warburton's obviously have seeds. Although it's important to note that seeds are not the same thing as grains and do not count for the purpose of something being multigrain. Who knew bread could be so complicated?
Given the extra emphasis placed on these terms used in the US, it's likely that this is somewhat of a marketing ploy. The key things to watch out are they using the whole grain? And what percentage of the total flour used is whole grain? Here's the bad news. Some of these loaves make it hard to figure that second one out.
In the UK, for something to be advertised as wholemeal bread, it must be made with 100% wholemeal flour. In the US, however, bread only has to be made with 50% wholemeal flour to be able to be sold as wholemeal bread. We do have something called 50-50 or best of both bread here in the UK. That means that it's a 50-50 blend of white and wholemeal flour. Importantly, in the UK, they do not and cannot advertise this as wholemeal bread, but in the US, they would be able to.
That actually sounds similar to something like this Sara Lee loaf, which describes itself as white bread with whole grain. It definitely tastes closer to white than whole grain. 8 grams of whole grain, no high fructose corn syrup, no artificial colors or flavors. Let's go!
I wanted the sugar.
When it comes to shelf life, most Brits will look at the tag on the label for guidance. According to the guidance on most retail websites, sliced white bread is good for around 3 days.
In the US, ours is printed on the package here. Something to note, in both countries, the manufacturer sets these dates. In the US, we have the shelf life, which means how long a product is good for, and the expiration date, and that's the last day the manufacturer guarantees quality and safety. Sometimes it's fine after that date, and sometimes it's not. Lastly, there's the sell-by date, which tells the stores who manage the inventory when they gotta get rid of it by. You can definitely eat it a few days after that if you handle the product properly.
Here in the UK, we have two things. We have a best before date, which is regarding quality. After that date, it might still be safe to eat, but it's not going to be at its best. And then secondly, we have a use by date. This is the date where if it's gone past that, it's probably no longer safe to consume. That said, I have definitely eaten bread when it's past its best by and probably use by dates. I've even picked off little moldy bits. I'm sorry.
I rarely encounter moldy bread. Perhaps it's because it is common to keep processed bread in the refrigerator, although not the case in the UK.
Absolutely
This is what we
not.
do here
If you
in our
ask
house.
famed UK baker Paul Hollywood, he claims that bread goes stale 3 times faster in the fridge. That's because the refrigeration actually draws moisture out of the bread. Typically in the UK, I would say bread is stored in a cupboard, kitchen counter, or...
Okay, fine. But I do want to point out, according to the USDA, commercially baked breads can be stored 7 to 14 days in the refrigerator.
Another crucial aspect when it comes to storing bread, how do you reseal the bag?
I tell you, the only way to do it, if a bread comes with this guy, this is what I use.
I'm definitely a twist and tuck. Simply grab your bag,
I'm definitely a twist.
spin it round, tuck it under there.
There it is. See,
I do
this is
what
the way to do it.
the
This is
UK
the
guy
easiest way to
does
do
until
it. This
Debbie
works
got mad
even
at
with one piece missing. Still can tuck it. Stays as fresh. Sometimes you'll get these clips. I don't know. Do you know what these are called?
Oh, those
Anyone know what
clicky
these are called?
things,
I have no idea what they're called.
The American-style bread clips are not common in the UK. Typically, it's just like a piece of tape. But I did find one on this bread. Here are some of the most popular bread options in the UK.
And here are a bunch of the most common processed breads in the US.
Right
of these
away,
we
you
buy
can see a
except for
difference
one.
in the packaging used in both countries.
Yeah,
The
Ezekiel.
3 main bread brands here in the UK are Hovis, Warburton's, and Kingsmill. Although additionally, every supermarket in the UK will stock its own brand of bread. The big brands over here have warm and pleasant names. They sound like maybe the surname of the founder of the brand or a town somewhere in England.
Whereas we have names like Wonder Bread or Nature's Own. It's from nature, guys.
No, it's not.
Don't forget about Nature's Harvest. And we also have my man Dave's Killer Bread. Got
What happened to
this. You
Ezekiel
see this
bread?
dude, Dave, I assume, playing the guitar.
One thing I will say about the marketing over here is that the UK bread companies take their TV ads very seriously. Hovis won ITV's Advert of the Decade award in 2009 for their Go On Lad campaign. And Warburton seemingly has a limitless TV ad budget. They've run campaigns with Sylvester Stallone, Samuel L. Jackson, Robert De Niro, and more. We do eat a lot of bread in the UK. 99% of households regularly buy bread, and an estimated 12 million loaves are sold every day. In 2024, the UK bread market was estimated to be worth £7.8 billion.
I just want to say this really quickly because I've heard this in comments and something recently that I've heard a lot of people, like British friends, especially, not my personal friends, but British people that have moved from there to here, the US, have hated our bread so much and couldn't find anything close enough to what they're used to that they now have to make their own bread. And for that, I'm sorry. That has to suck.
That would be hard.
That's really bad. And I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean that. I'm not just taking the piss. I'm serious. I still don't like saying that. There has to be a more feminine way to say that. Taking the mick. That sounds too old. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, I just feel bad. So I'm sorry.
All of the major 3 players produce a white loaf and a wholemeal loaf as the bare minimum.
The U.S. bread industry was valued at $30 billion in 2022. Grupo Bimbo is the biggest with a $15 billion market cap, owning over 40 brands.
Never heard of it.
Wasn't going to get all of them.
Bimbo, huh?
Couldn't have got all of them. So these are 4. Starting here, we got Sara Lee. We all know Sarah. Nature's Harvest.
We know her.
Artisano. And I'm assuming this is pronounced Oroweets, but they took out the H. I don't know why. What can be said about this bread?
We had the...
We already saw the Sara Lee, we saw Nature's Harvest. Guys, this one, how clever is this? They made it seem like the bag is steamed because they put a hot loaf of bread in here. This isn't steamed. This isn't condensation.
I never noticed that.
The plastic is frosted. Let me show you. This is clever. This is. I would probably.
That bread is actually
not
not good at all, but I'm
golden wheat. So let's taste this.
It's very expensive. It's bad.
It says golden wheat. This is just like white bread.
Exactly. So we found that out recently.
Points for the steam bag. This would definitely stand out in the aisle. I hope nobody bought this thinking that, like, wow, they must be bagging in the back of this Vaughn's or whatever.
From Hovis, we'll start with Best of Both. I touched upon it earlier, but Best of Both is a type of loaf that contains 50% white flour and 50% wholemeal flour. So for context, here we have a white bread slice,
why do you want
Best of Both slice, and here is a wholemeal slice.
I don't know. You
I
want
think the draw of this one is that it's kind of like a healthier slice, and here is a wholemeal slice.
See, right there. That texture looks just like ours.
I know it does.
Looks identical. I want to squeeze that.
It does.
I just wanted to see that up close, and I'm glad he showed it. Like it. So this has been through some stuff, but it does look
Well, I
the
think
same.
that's comparable to that, but our traditional white bread or wheat bread is much lighter,
Yeah, no, I know.
fluffier.
I was just curious because I wanted to see it. Wish you guys could send us bread.
I know. I wish we could feel it.
All right, just curious.
Is a wholemeal slice. I think the draw of this one is that it's kind of like a healthier option than white bread, but without fully going to the brown bread side. I also think that when Joe first heard about this, he thought it was going to be like a zebra loaf, like one brown, one white slice, which I actually kind of like the idea of. Hovis also makes a granary loaf. According to the website, the granary method was discovered by Benedictine monks in Burton Abbey. What they would do is actually malt their grains. So they would let them just about start to sprout and then toast them. So you really do get kind of like a rich malty flavor from this bread compared to just a classic wholemeal.
I probably would pick the whole grain, healthy multigrain. I mean, like I can be persuaded. It says heart healthy on here. That's important to me. I'm getting it. You know. Yes, it has more sugar, but it has 40 grams of whole grains, 9 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber.
That's like $6 for that loaf.
It's free from artificial preservatives, all those things earlier that we scared you with. So it's not, you're not really tipping the scales in your health, good or bad, with the bread you're picking. Like, what are you putting in the middle of it and how much are you eating it, I think, has more to do with your health than whatever bread you're picking. Not a nutritionist. Don't take this clip and dunk on me on TikTok. People are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Right. I never said I did.
Now we're on to some options from Warburton's. We went a bit crazier here. I promise there's no bias. Firstly, we have this protein power loaf. This one has 16 grams of protein in every 2 slices, which does sound quite high. For context, it's basically double the amount of a white toasty loaf. I guess
this
if
is
I
weird
were
looking. Sorry, it's different.
Which quite obviously I'm not. Maybe I would look into doing this. I just worry that with the protein stuff, often it's an excuse to charge a bit more than you normally would for a product that hasn't really changed much. In recent years, a lot of the bread makers have started doing toasty loaves. The primary use of this is actually for toasty sandwiches, usually with something like cheese and other toppings in the middle. This is extra thick bread, so it's designed to contain all those delicious toasty fillings.
Next up, Flour Foods, the second biggest producer of processed bread in the U.S. Also, so many big brands. Here's 4. Look, I went to Walmart. All right, this is what they have.
Home Pride.
Nature's Own.
My grandparents used to buy that one.
Look at this.
Sometimes.
UK, look at this. Now they got pictures of wheat on here. 13 grams of whole grain.
Here we have a baker's bloomer loaf. It's extra thick white bread with what they describe as a rustic crust. By rustic, I think they mean it's a little bit thicker compared to a crust that you would get on a regular loaf. They also give it a dusting of this flour topping as well. Personally, this is some of my favorite toast bread. Next up, we have Danish bread. Not made in Denmark, still made by Warburtons, just called Danish bread. This is advertised as like a lower calorie option when compared to regular bread. Apparently they use a Danish technique, which is to put the bread in a larger than usual loaf tin. As it bakes, it's allowed to rise higher. More air pockets are in there.
Do you have like a
so there's
German
kind of like
bread?
less density
Right?
going on.
Home Pride.
That's
Look at
not
this, got
bad.
the silhouette of the lady holding a
I didn't
steaming
know that existed still.
loaf of bread. We're assuming it
Went
just
to Walmart. It don't
screams
still exist.
Oh yeah, the
from
top
a
of those. Forgot
farm
about
or a
that.
small town. Surely the people who made this took painstaking care. It just is processed.
It is, sadly.
This is softer.
Which is softer?
Couldn't
Ew.
tell the difference.
Nature's own.
I know there's difference, but back to what I said before, the reason I get like the bread with like nuts and stuff in it, because I'm like, all of this tastes too similar. I might as well get something at least like the possibility of getting some grains in there.
As a slightly more fancy option, we have a Old English white loaf. One that I do have a soft spot for is tiger bread.
Okay,
Warburtons
tiger
have been
blood,
heavily into
sorry.
the branding for this one, which
Yeah.
I appreciate. We have the kind of like tiger stripe packaging down here, the claw over the
Cincinnati
label.
would love
Tiger
that.
bread gets its name
Yeah,
from
they
the
would.
pattern on the top. What you do is you start with a white loaf and then you paint a kind of rice paste on top of it. As it bakes and rises,
What?
the rice paste will
want that.
crack and also char up a little bit. So you end up with this, almost kind of tiger pattern paint on top. It does add like a little bit of a distinctive
That's
flavor
a
to
cool
it, but I
bread.
think
We
it's
should make
more
those here
about
in
the
our
look of
city.
it and also the texture. Like I said, Brits love a seeded loaf, and Warburtons are cashing in on that. Here is their original seeded batch loaf. I do like the look of a seeded loaf. It feels healthier as well, just the fact that you can see the seeds that you're eating. And then finally, one that I found today that I've never seen before
Looks
is
small.
a milk roll. I don't know what this is.
It's a milk
I know
roll.
in Japan they make milk bread. I think it's called shokupan. Maybe it's kind of like that. It's just odd
I've
to see
never
like
heard
a
of that.
cylindrical bread, you know? You do not see that often.
Weird.
I mean, to me, that just tastes like white bread.
People want to get granular, pun intended, I guess, about the differences. But if all this tastes the same, don't you think you'd want something like, look, at least I'm getting my
Yeah, but
daily
that's got 10 grams of
seeds.
freaking-
yeah,
or
more
5
sugar,
grams
more
per
fat, but like,
slice
doesn't this seem like
of
this has
sugar.
got more of the good stuff in it? This is really good. I, of course, have no proof of this. I'm wondering, because now that I know that it has a lot of added sugar,
Yeah.
it does taste a little sweeter than the other ones. Like I'm noticing a sweet difference.
I bet.
But I don't know if maybe they're adding more sugar to this to maybe offset what would essentially be a bitter taste of these like seeds and grains.
Check the sodium count.
Here we have
Did
the
he do that?
Kingsmill 50/50.
don't think
Then we have a play on their 50/50, which is 50/50 no crusts. Obviously, it's not possible.
How many of you eat the crust on your bread? I don't think it's just Natasha. I know.
In America,
In
it's
America.
a debate about
Yes.
crust, and I hate crust. I know when we talked about this when we watched the Germany video, everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
Crust is the best. I hate it. That's awesome. That takes a lot of work out of things.
It does.
Why does that not exist here? Why does that exist there? Why not
I
here?
have no idea.
I'm not okay with this.
I have no idea. And maybe it does, and we just didn't look
Mm-mm.
for it.
I'm Googling that when we get off this. When we get off. When we get off this phone call with you guys. This video chat with you. I do look at it that way. Huh.
Possible, as far as I'm aware, to bake a loaf without crusts. So they must be baking regular loaves
Yeah.
and then just cutting all the crusts
That's
off them and
genius.
putting them in bags. Also, come on, if you're not eating your crusts, please grow up.
No.
Even when I
will
was
never.
young and a fussy eater, I ate my crusts. That's one thing I can claim some moral high ground on.
I can't. I
We're not
won't.
fans of food waste. Every crust we cut off goes on to make animal feed. The animals can eat grass. Humans should eat their crusts.
Makes your hair curly.
The average price of this loaf of Wonder Bread from my local Walmart was
Old wives'
$2.92
Oh, here we go.
for
Money time.
20 slices.
Here is our Hovis Soft White 800-gram loaf. At Tesco, that'll cost you £1.39. That's 40% cheaper
Wow.
compared to the Wonder Bread. Obviously, costs can vary depending on which store you go to.
One study showed that in the US, the price difference between a white loaf of bread at a Walmart state to state, the difference of price could vary as much as $3.
Yeah, I was
Bread
gonna say,
is
that's a
pretty
lot
cheap
more
in
than
the UK,
that here. isn't
especially
it?
if you're willing to avoid the branded goods. Aldi's own brand version of
Not
this
sure.
loaf will cost you just 47 pence.
How expensive can we get with grocery store bread?
Here
Very.
is a premium crafted white sourdough loaf from Tesco. This loaf cost me £3.75. At 800
That's
grams,
nothing.
it's also the same size as the Hovis loaf.
We have so much bread in the US. So
Okay. Why am I excited?
This is one of your favorite breads.
That is the only bread I like.
Mm-hmm.
That's Ezekiel bread. I love this bread with all my heart and soul.
Yes, we buy that when we're treating ourselves.
Which
Should be more often than
isn't
what it is.
often anymore, but I really love that bread. It's good. Okay. It's expensive. We're going to find out. But
much.
we already know.
Here's a loaf of Ezekiel bread. This loaf was $7.99 for 20 slices. Now,
That's no lie.
Yes.
I've seen it higher than that even.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know why they didn't compare that to any of the UK stuff. I really wish they had. I would say that's the healthiest, best bread we have
Probably
in this country.
It's such a specialty bread.
It's sprouted too.
It is.
Maybe so. Sorry.
Here's a loaf of Ezekiel bread. This loaf was $7.99 for 20 slices.
Yeah,
now, it
so
is
upsetting.
not an ultra-processed bread. I
Told
will
you.
say that. So it
It's not.
probably has something to do with the increase in price. Now, out of morbid curiosity, I want to know what's the most expensive loaf of processed bread I could get here in Los Angeles. So, of course, I went on to Erewhon.com. For those of you who don't know, Erewhon is a grocery chain in Los Angeles where people
Never heard of it.
get like smoothies for like 50
Very
bucks
super.
or whatever. It's very
What?
expensive. Way more expensive
kidding.
than Whole Foods. Anyway, I found this. A keto sandwich bread, the base culture keto bread, a loaf of it for $12. Ooh.
Bread has been around
Wow.
forever. The ancient Egyptians were some of the first to make it, and that was millennia ago. Eventually, bread made its way up through Europe. Romans were all about bread during the Roman Empire. When European settlers went over to the US, they brought bread with them.
Once the
Thank
U.S.
you.
started mass producing wheat, bread as an industry exploded. The Industrial Revolution introduced us to mechanically milled flour so it could be created in abundance. Processes were introduced, like adding chemicals, to make mass bread production
That was
more
a mistake.
reliable at a massive scale that was consistent with texture, taste, and shelf life. Otto Rohwedder came along in the early 1900s with his industrial bread slicer, and everyone lost their minds.
Bread was cheap, widely available, and lasted a long time. In many ways, it was actually paramount in starting modern supermarket culture. Eventually, many more styles of bread were introduced to the mass market, leading us to today, when many grocery stores have entire aisles dedicated just to bread.
Which bread do I normally have in my house? You guys are not going to believe this. But because of my diet, as you've seen from these two shows that I host, my wife does most of the grocery ordering.
He's gonna say white bread.
Every time I go to the grocery store, I come back with chips
Wonder Bread.
and goldfish crackers and energy drinks.
Maybe.
So she's just like, she takes care of it and does the Instacart order. And the bread that she introduced me to, that we have in our house almost exclusively, is this Ezekiel bread.
Right on.
If I was to pick though,
Good for
sometimes
you.
I'll get Dave's Killer Bread. I feel like with Dave's Killer Bread, I'm like supporting like the little guy. I just realized in this video today that it was bought by a giant corporation, so I guess not. Hey, Dave, the American dream, right? You made a company, you sold it. I'm assuming you play guitar now. Good for you.
That was a lot more than I planned to learn about
Yeah,
bread in this episode,
definitely.
but it was still interesting to know all that stuff. But yeah, so the whole sugar content is upsetting. I really wish they had used the Ezekiel bread to compare it to some of the UK stuff, though, because I'd love to know.
Well, we can go back and look at that on our own. But the sugar was surprising. And then when you brought up the sugar trade-off with the sodium, it's basically.
Well, it is true, though. Like,
It
that's the way it is. We already knew that there was a high sugar content in our bread anyway.
Absolutely.
We're already aware of that. I don't eat a lot of bread. Debbie loves bread, and I don't so much.
I do love bread, but I don't,
You don't
eat a lot
of
of
it, though.
sandwiches and stuff like that. But a dinner roll, garlic bread, sure, I'm in. But to have like a loaf of bread, not
No.
so much.
And then there's the whole, like, I want to know why it is that you guys put the butter on your bread, and then, like, mayonnaise on top of that, too, where we don't do that in America.
Mhm.
We only put, if we're going to put mayonnaise on a sandwich, which we do, we'll put the mayo on. Or if it's
Mustard or whatever,
But we
condiment.
never put butter on bread unless it's by itself.
Unless it's plain old toast.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to know, why do you do that?
Mm.
And I've heard in comments people say because it's dry. Well, I think bread in general is dry.
Yeah.
But we still we don't put butter on it. That's a whole video that someone needs to do at that. You know, we don't have the knowledge, so we don't know. But anyway, I thought this was all very interesting, and we'd love to hear
It
some of your
was.
feedback. I know a lot of people have been to both places and have tried both, and please don't just put in the comments section, American bread sucks. Okay, we already know that. Tell us something we don't know about your bread, and maybe something you've noticed a difference. Or, you know what, help out someone from the UK that lives in America now. If you've done that yourself and you live here and you found a bread that you like, that other British people might like living here, help them out. Put that in the comments section. That could be life-saving for
helpful.
somebody. And hit the like button if you guys like today's show, and consider subscribing to the channel. We'll see you on the next episode. And until then, and as always, please love like jazz.
Be as strong as Tyson.
Bye.
Bye.